Meeple Nation Podcast, Episode 402, Civilization Games.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation is brought to you by GameToppersLLC.com. Go to their website, check them out, fantasize, purchase, do ever what your heart's desired, because they have quality product and quality things that make any size of upgrade to your game table that you want. Whether it be just a mat, an actual game topper table, the leaves to make it so that you can have a game set up, have dinner, and then take it down and continue your game. Whatever you need to do, they got it covered. GameToppersLLC.com.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Dave Holliday.
I am Logan, as foretold, Howard. And it is a special treat for you to have me tonight.
It is. We weren't expecting to have Logan join us, so we're happy to have him here.
Yeah, he had work and then said, forget work. Podcast is more important.
Yes, exactly. That's how it went down. Show up at work and, yeah, so there's an issue. Shh. Podcast. I have to go.
I have to go.
The bat signal has been risen.
Not only do you get to listen to Logan tonight on the podcast, you can read some of his work and work from the rest of us on blogs on our website, meeplenation.com. The four of us that have written blogs, plus we have some additional people that are kind enough to write blogs, and some of the blogs that have come out from our additional bloggers have been awesome. So check those out, check the blogs out. We have bios on our website as well. You can subscribe and get notifications when we get new blogs out. You can listen to any of our episodes, any and all of them, and all the future ones will be on the website. So check us out, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions for us, message us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or email us at meeplenation@gmail.com.
We are near the end of the year. 2021 is almost in the books.
So this is when Nathan starts breaking out his whip the most.
So
Get those game goals done.
they're not done. We only got a week left before the end of the year. So game goals are in the books. 2021 game goals completed. All my game goals completed almost before December. So this year, I think, maybe you guys can disagree or not still, but this year I think my game goals were a lot more pleasant than years in past.
Yeah, we didn't have to play Space Base. I'm fantastic.
Space Base is having a new expansion next year, so you can look forward to more Space Base then. Last week we talked about animal games. This week we are talking about civilization games. Games where you're building a civilization, you're building an empire, you're developing a city, anything that follows along those lines. Think of that basic game, Settlers of Catan, where you're building your civilization on the island of Catan. You're building settlements, you're building cities, you're building that empire, that city, that civilization on the island of Catan. That's the kind of road that we're going to go into. And it was funny, as I was putting together games that we could talk about on this list, and I went through my games, and I have a small amount of civilization games, and I looked at Andy's list, and Andy's list of civilization games is like 4 times the length of mine. Apparently Andy likes civilization games more than I do.
So I do love civilization games.
So I'm sure most of the time we're going to be listening to you, and probably Dave assisting, more than you're going to be listening to me talk about civilization, because my civilization game count is inferior compared to your superior, much like my Watsons compared to your Moriartys.
Mycrofts.
Whatever.
Mycrofts are 4x6 or 4x8. So you can turn one Mycroft into 2 Moriartys if you have the end caps.
Which is all information you can find on GameToppersLLC.com.
There you go. I have 2 mats. So I have, technically right now, I have 2 Moriartys or a Mycroft, Moriarty, and another Mycroft.
Or 4 Moriartys.
I don't have 2 sets of end caps.
Oh,
just
you
one
don't.
set.
You're such a slacker.
I know.
You should really look into that.
But with 2 Mycrofts and the leaves, you can make 2 regular Mycrofts and then use the leaves with the end caps to make a Moriarty. Technically, would have 3 game toppers at that point.
Which is the beginning of his own civilization of playing board games.
You are spot on, Logan. That is the basis of that civilization mechanic. And so,
Circle gets the square. I mean, we can bring it back around.
no further interruption. We're going to turn some time over to Andy, and Andy's going to tell us all about civilization games mingled in with material from the rest of us.
The first game I could say that was my favorite game, and it was my favorite game for many years, is a Civilization game. And that is Twilight Imperium. It was 3rd edition. I've never played 4th edition, although I think I would like 4th edition more. I'm looking at the differences. So with Twilight Imperium, the premise is the same between 3rd and 4th edition. It's an epic empire building game of stellar conflict, trade, and struggle for power. And players take the role of ancient galactic civilizations, seeking to seize the imperial throne via warfare, diplomacy, and technological progression. You build basically a galaxy at the beginning of the game. Each player will choose a race. Each of the races will have a asymmetrical power. This is actually one of the things I like the most about the game, the different races you can play and how each of them plays so differently. Mm-hmm. So everybody has starting planets or starting system that they're all equidistant to each other. And you're trying to go out and colonize planets, sometimes fighting. You're building ships and having fleets that will have space battles. You will have ground battles as you're trying to take over planets if another opponent has taken over something. Ultimately, in the center of the board is the center of the galaxy, or the most important planet, which is the map has a center planet, which is called Meeple Rex. Once somebody controls Meeple Rex, in the 4th edition, it actually adds another phase in the game. One of the things that drew me to this game initially was that there was politics that people vote on. The planets you control will have a resource value and an influence value. You get to choose planets that you have conquered or that you control. You get to choose whether you want to use it for resources that round or whether you use the influence that particular planet has. You're going to use that influence. One of the ways you can use it is to vote on laws or agendas that get brought in the 3rd edition via the political card, or in the 4th edition once somebody actually has seized control of Meeple Rex. These can be just a one-time effect, or they can completely change a rule in the game and will be there the rest of the game. For me, that was really intriguing. The game progresses and you actually have influence on the game, on how the rules work, and if you have enough influence, you can make it so the game can tilt in your favor substantially, just via the political side of it. There is conflict. Conflict isn't the main premise of the game. I mean, as far as fighting your opponents. Ultimately, there's objectives that are public objectives that everybody can complete, and there's a point value on those. There are secret objectives that you get to complete. Once you complete them, they're typically going to be worth 2 points. As soon as somebody gets to 10 points, the game is over. I've loved this game. And the reason why I don't get it to the table very often, it is a extremely lengthy game. I mean, we're talking, you start on a Saturday morning and you're playing all day.
What's wrong with that?
It's an 8-hour game at least. And if you're playing with someone new, it's probably, or Dave, it's probably a 12-hour game. It really is. I think it's worth the time. It's just a matter of finding that time. Any more is really quite difficult to do.
Finding that time and finding the people who also are okay
right
with that time.
Yeah, because this is a game that you're going to plan. This is our game night. This is our weekend that we're going to play this game. Like Hug a Meeple Con could be centered around Twilight Imperium.
Right. The last time I played, that's what we did. It was a Saturday morning. We started and we played until, I think we finished at about 5 in the afternoon.
I was thinking maybe this is why I like Civilization games so much. Because a lot of the games in this category are like that. For example, the game Civilization. It's another one where we've done the same thing. We've said, well, we'll get together Saturday morning and play and play and play.
Yeah, that's another game that is extremely long, but development is a little different on that. But you can not focus all on military in Civilization, the board game. In fact, I have had more fun not doing the military route. But if someone does, you have to inevitably build some stuff up.
And I think that's why I like that game probably a little bit better than Twilight Imperium, because I prefer the non-military route in development.
I can definitely see that. I think what set Twilight Imperium apart for me was more the politics in it. Mm-hmm. It was just so unique on how they did that, and the fact that if you decided to go after planets that had maybe a little more influence heavy than resource heavy, the way you could tilt the game in your favor, I just thought it was really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's awesome as well.
It's definitely a game I would be interested in playing, but again, it's like you said, is setting aside that time, because I think Twilight Imperium is one of those quintessential, if you're really into board games, oh, I've played Twilight Imperium. Well, I played lots, but we haven't set aside 12 hours to play a game.
So I was just looking at the time. Sometimes, Andy, you've played games with Dave, so that time limit gets challenged, right?
Exaggerated.
So, challenged, exaggerated, tomato with Dave. So on BGG, Twilight Imperium 3rd edition has that 3 hour to 4 hour time limit. Like Dave mentioned, playing with new people. Andy, like you mentioned, playing with Dave, that 4 hours is going to be extended, probably to closer to that 6 hours.
Oh, it was definitely more than 6.
But then looking at that Twilight Imperium 4th edition, it has a listed play time of 4 to 8 hours.
Oh,
I just think they corrected the time.
Is that what it was?
I really do. I mean, yes, you get that added phase once the politics comes into the game, but you always had that with 3rd edition. If someone took the politics card. I mean, if it didn't get taken, then it wasn't obviously going to be an issue. Eventually, someone's going to take it. But I think that's how I feel, is that's a correction as to really what the gameplay is, because it is a long game.
So I played Twilight Imperium once years ago. It didn't last more than 4 hours.
Good for you. How many players did you have?
We had 4 players, I believe. And that's been years ago, so it could have been more or less. Don't remember it being 4 hours. It could have been 3 hours, but I don't remember it being 4 hours.
Yes, it is a long game, but it's not a game that turns are long. Maybe it takes a long time to get the game developed to where people are scoring enough points to win, but it's not like someone's taking a turn that lasts 20 minutes. Most people aren't taking turns that last 20 minutes.
Most people.
Why is everybody looking at you, Dave?
I don't know. I had to use that line earlier today when I was in study group. And she was talking about age-related illness. And I had to point out, why does she keep looking at me when she brings this stuff up?
It is a heavier game. A weight of 4.24 out of 5.
Well deserved, too.
Yes, it is. The rule book is something like 48 or 50 pages long. I mean, there's a lot of rules. I know with 4th edition they had a quick start, easy rules, and it was still like 25 pages. There's definitely a lot of rules. It's complicated. It is a heavy game, but it is a lot of fun.
And it goes up to 6 players.
And I'm not a big fan of direct conflict games, which is probably my least favorite part about Twilight Imperium. Space combat's kind of fun, but it's probably my least favorite part about it. I don't play a lot of games that have that direct conflict, but there are a few Civilization games that I actually enjoy. One of those I can't get very many people to play with me because they don't like direct conflict games, and that's Small World. I think the reason why I don't like direct conflict games is there's a lot of player elimination in it. You can really just hose someone over with games of that type, whereas Small World, I think, kind of takes that element out of it. Your civilization that you're playing will go into decline, and then you bring in a new one, and you can start fresh. It makes it so the rounds are a little more enjoyable. Because yes, you're still conquering. It's just expected because it's a small board. It's not like you have this huge board. It's a small board that you're expected to conquer and just score as many points. And then the person that's after you is going to do the exact same thing.
I still have a problem with this game because of the direct conflict. Because I've played games of this where it does seem like people have still gotten hosed. Partially because they had a civilization where banking on this civilization in decline, right? Because some of the civilizations, their strength is when they're in decline. And the only way that they're going to score any points is if they last for a little bit in decline. And so it's too easy to, boom, legs gone.
And I think that depends on player count. If you can get to where you have another turn with a game with fewer players in it, probably is a better race to play with that ability because of the fact that, you're more likely to have your people still on there even though they're in decline. I love the asymmetrical powers in this with the different races and the abilities and how it randomizes that each round because there's 2 parts that you're going to pick. It changes it. It makes it the replayability a little bit higher. Plus they have a ton of content with just different maps and there's just so much to Small World. I've only bought the small expansion packs. I haven't bought any of the big maps or anything just because I don't get it to the table often enough to warrant the cost and the shelf space.
Small World is a game that it's okay for me. I totally see why so many people love it. I know it's a very popular game amongst a lot of people because it's all that conflict.
But the interesting thing is you say that, Dave. There is a game I know you like. It's so similar.
It is in a lot of ways, yes. History of the World, I'm sure, is what you're talking about. And it is a game that I really have enjoyed a lot. History of the World, we've played that game for years and years.
Yeah.
In fact, one of my fondest gaming memories was playing History of the World. Marianne Ivankovich knocked over a glass of water on the table, and there are so many cardboard pieces to this game. You've never seen so many old people moving so quickly to get that table cleaned up, to get the board and all those pieces off so that they didn't soak and get ruined. With History of the World, there's so much more going on than just... To me, it seems like, anyway, there's a lot more going on than just the conflict. And in fact,
that's true.
Again, when it comes down to it, I am generally looking for the other avenues of gaining strength and scoring points in History of the World than going and conquering somebody.
Well, with History of the World, one of the things that intrigues me about it is based on history, right? With the civilizations in history, the rise and fall of those civilizations, you score points. Each region is worth higher or lower points depending on which era you're in. Eastern Asia, that civilization had risen to power and was one of the more powerful civilizations in the world. That area during that particular time that you're playing in the game was worth the most points. Yeah. And then later in the game, it gets to where it's worth fewer and fewer points.
It's really cool because you play through several epochs. Those cardboard pieces I was talking about are kind of how they determine that. So each area, you've got Northern Europe, you've got Western Europe, North America, all these different regions throughout the world, each have a little cardboard piece that indicates what scale the points are going to be during that epoch. When that epoch ends, you remove that cardboard piece and go to the next. That's one of my favorite things about it. I think it's really cool how it tries to follow somewhat the historicity of those things, right?
Wait. What was that word?
Word of the day, historicity.
For those listening at home,
It's the historical authenticity. For example, an effort to assert the historicity of poetry and the political power of poets.
props to Dave. With that, drop the mic. Don't drop that mic. That's expensive. Class is dismissed.
Wow, I guess. We'll see you next time.
I love that about this game. There's just so much more with this game, too. You have a bunch of cards, and I can't remember what they're called. You get these power cards throughout the game that will do different things. Some of them, they have to be played during a specific epoch.
Yeah, and you know what? The best thing about those and the most exciting thing is when you get a minor civilization.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, you get so excited when you get one of those cards because it basically almost start with two civilizations from that epoch. It's so fun.
For example, you'll get the Ottoman Empire. So you've got your main empire that you're going to be working on, but then you play this card, this minor empire, in the location of the world where they would be, and it's just a couple of units that you get to go out and explore, and then you're going to gain points, again, based on the footprint that you have in that region during that time of the world. It's just a really cool game.
So this is another 3 to 6 player game. Games like this, the timing on it makes me laugh. Instead of saying like it's a 2 to 3 hour game, this is a 2 hour, 15-minute game to 3.5 hours.
Wait, what?
But
They
just
got it down to
15
that
minutes,
fraction.
right? Like,
Yeah, 2 hours and 15 minutes.
It's not going to take 2 hours and 10 minutes. No, that's
No.
impossible.
2 hours and 15 minutes minimum.
But this is a game that's not weighted that heavily. It says that it's a 2.77. I could see that totally.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not super complicated, but there's a lot of replayability. Like I said, we've played this a ton of times. One of the things that I'm super impressed about with this game is it came out in 1991.
That's the year I graduated high school.
How old were you, Logan?
All my friends are old. I was 4 years old.
And now you've grown up into Lord Logan Howard. I mean, who knew?
Lord Logan, as foretold, Howard.
Yep, I know. The legends were true. History of the World sounds amazing, but I think a lot of them handle that development better than others. Like Tapestry. What was it last time that we were playing? I can't remember who was saying it. It's just really weird that my civilization has developed space flight before they even developed telephones.
It was one of the last times that we played that. Somebody pointed, I think it was Corey, that funny.
It's interesting because if we go back to Twilight Imperium for a minute, the tech tree, that's one of the other amazing parts about Twilight Imperium. The technology and the way it worked in 3rd edition was actually more complicated. It kind of followed that a little bit better to where you had to have certain things to get this next technology, which 4th edition does, but it's not near as complex and maybe a little less intuitive as far as stuff like that goes. It's more simplified for gameplay.
I think that's why they did it in Tapestry the way
I think
they
so.
did. Because they really wanted to simplify it, that you don't have to focus on every single tree to win. I don't think there's enough time in the game to do it, actually.
That kind of forces you to diversify. I think that would actually take away from the game from some of the strategic paths that you may want to follow in it.
In Tapestry, you get those bonus buildings for your little civilization map that you're building. You only get if you're going to be better in that particular track over somebody else.
Now, that being said, it does counter that a little bit. So with your technologies in Tapestry, there is a prerequisite of a certain technology needs to be unlocked by someone playing the game, right?
Yes.
So even though maybe I don't have telephone unlocked, somebody else has to have telephone unlocked for me to play a specific tech card.
That's only the tech cards. That's not necessarily me discovering spaceflight.
A game that I have only played once, and I played solo. Honestly, don't know if I'll ever get it to the table. At least get it to the table and play it, and that's StarCraft. Players battle for galactic domination. It's based on the video game StarCraft, it's a war game.
It's a great classic war game.
It very much is. I know Warcraft came out on the PC first, and then they basically based StarCraft with a space thing. You're building troops, you're getting resources, and then you go out and fighting for territory. Thematically, it's awesome. I don't remember it. The playthrough I did was when I first bought the game. Bought it when it first came out. This was released in 2007, so I've owned it for 14 years now. Played it in 2007, so it's been a minute.
That's one that we definitely should play. I have always wanted to play StarCraft, the video game. Never done either.
The video game's fun. I've played the video game and have had a ton of both time and fun spent, right? I recall that I liked StarCraft, the board game, but once again, it was another one of those, it's a longer game.
Another one of those 3 to 4 hour games. But again, 2 to 6 players.
So are we going to have an episode called Games That We Should Play If We Have Time? Should we rename this right now?
That's kind of the issue with these longer games. Which is interesting, because we'll play games like Nemesis and spend probably about that much time, right?
I'm sure we spend the same amount of time.
And we'll get that to the table. I don't know why we don't get games like Twilight Imperium to the table, because we should. As I've done research for this and was looking into 4th edition, I want to get 4th edition because it sounds amazing. As much as I loved 3rd edition, 4th edition sounds better.
And for a long time, Nathan complained about longer games. We've actually played a lot of longer games. The ones that are advertised as longer, you don't want to play them.
A game can be long and not feel long.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can have the inverse, right? A game that can be long and feel like it was even longer than it was.
Put a stake to my heart.
Yeah.
Because that is...
It's just more of we just plan on it. Okay, we're going to play this game. It's going to take 4 hours to play. We've been playing Descent Legends of the Dark, and it's been 2 to 3 hours each session.
Some sessions have gone close to that 4 hours.
My second time playing, super stoked to do it. And it was a longer... As we're playing through the map, I'm like, sweet, we're about done. And it went on for like another hour.
Just kept thinking we were right here at the end.
And it just kept going.
And going and going.
But I think that's the key with these games. As long as they balance that longer game with keeping you engaged, your turns aren't super long, so you don't have I'm going to play on my phone for 30, 40 minutes.
If I'm playing a game and I start to reach for my phone in between turns, that's when a game loses it for me.
You know what, though? I really feel like that's user error. Because I've discovered the same thing when I'm watching a TV show. Now it's such a habit. If I'm watching a TV show or a movie at home, I don't even like watching them at home anymore. I only want to watch things in the theater, because if my phone is there and available, I'm going to grab it. And then I end up not enjoying whatever it is that I'm watching.
Yeah,
right?
no, I get that.
And I feel like I have the same thing in game. If my phone's there sometimes, and I'm like, man, if I make this into a habit like I did, and I ruined all of my TV watching experience. So I feel like that's partially that way.
Certain games can make or break that too. Because
Totally.
like Descent, when we were playing it the other day, there was a couple times I was watching short little videos on my phone. I took my turn first or last in a round, and then immediately piggybacked after that. I had both of my turns in a really short span. Then I had to wait for everybody else to take their turn. I mean, obviously, you chat and talk about everybody else's turn to strategize. It's co-op. There's still that, as you were saying, user error, but then not, because it's a strategy type thing too.
And kind of to your point, Logan, I think what can make a game feel long is the length in between turns.
I think you're spot on for me. If I can go 20 minutes and be not at the table, and that's okay, that's not okay.
Yeah.
If I can walk away from the table and no one misses me and it doesn't affect gameplay at all, that game fell flat for me.
That's where a lot of these Civilization games are longer, but then they try to address that. And so they have to keep you drawn in. And I think that's the balance act that they have these games. And so you'll have the better ones that obviously do that better.
A lot of these Civilization games are really good games. They're really good because of the fact you really start from nothing and you have to build that up. It takes time. That's why they're long. To your point, Logan, if you can do that, but still make turns quick, keep the game moving and keep your turns short, but still feel like you have, maybe get a lot of quick turns and you actually can accomplish a lot during that time. I haven't played a really good Civilization game that hasn't been a longer game.
Challenge accepted. Let's talk It's a Wonderful World.
And I thought it was a mediocre game.
Yeah, I thought we were talking good games, really good games. That was a high bar, Nathan, and you just kind of like...
Well, I mean, Small World, right? Small World's not a long game.
It's not. I don't think it's a really good Civilization game. I think it's
Yeah,
a fun Civilization game, but a really good one where I feel like I just built a Civilization and that was a lot of fun. I love the Civilization PC games.
Yes.
To get that same feel out of a board game, it takes time.
It's a Wonderful World. I actually really enjoy 30 to 60 minutes.
It does play quick.
You're building that civilization. I mean, you talked about StarCraft. Most of these civilization games that we've talked about are more kind of ancient history,
Right.
world civilization development games. And you have games like Race for the Galaxy, which is a civilization game. Not a longer one, not a bad one. You're developing that civilization within your tableau of worlds within the galaxy. I really enjoy It's a Wonderful World. It was on my 10 for 10 this year. Nailed it. 9 of those 10 games were played solo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a game I actually really enjoyed. I look forward to new content with that. I'm hoping that they come out with some expansions that, not just new cards, something that will add to gameplay a little bit. I thoroughly enjoyed that one.
To me, it doesn't necessarily belong in the Civilization games. It's kind of like my nitpicking at the economy games, where there are games that were there that, yes, technically they do cover this, but there's not really that genre with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Wonderful World, very much a tableau game with just a kind of splash of civilizations on top. So when I'm thinking Civilization game, I'm thinking like those big epic games too, which I agree, they're
Right.
trying to scratch that itch without putting in the time commitment.
Which I think there's a place for that. When I think of a Civilization game, this is just because of my personal preference, but I'm thinking tech trees, building out this amazing civilization that's unique. My board or whatever I'm doing is unique to what everybody else is doing because there are so many options with technologies and actions that you're doing and asymmetrical powers and different races, or there's a lot of options. And once again, I go back to tech trees, technology trees. I think if you have a really good tech tree, I honestly like the more complicated ones. If I'm going to play a Civilization game, I don't mind having a complicated tech tree.
I'm
You
with
didn't
you.
play Sidereal Confluence, did you?
I did not.
Oh, I think you would like that
I
if
was
you like
just-
complicated tech trees.
Yeah, I was just going to point that out. That kind of hits on a lot of those things that you were talking about. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would.
I still think I'm kind of mixed on that game. The effort that they've put into that game is amazing.
Going back to It's a Wonderful World, I've only played it twice, and I've enjoyed it, but it did not scratch the Civilization itch for me.
I'll allow that for sure, but it is still doing that, right? There is the It's a Wonderful Kingdom coming out next year. It's a 1 to 2 player game. Played It's a Wonderful World solo. I'll probably play this one. Probably have a tougher time playing It's a Wonderful Kingdom with 2 players than I will playing it solo. One that I am looking forward to and is going to be on my 10 for 10 next year, so brace yourselves. I'm going to make you guys play Seafall,
Yes.
an exploration civilization building game. It's a legacy game. Each of us is building up our...
Oh, good.
That's one I can't wait for. I am super excited about that. Through the Ages, a new story of civilization. Another civilization game that I have really enjoyed. I've only played it in person a couple of times. Most of my plays have been online. A pretty heavy one. It's 4.41. 2 to 4 player game. Straight up 120 minutes is what it says.
Just
So,
flat.
120 minutes. It's not uber long like some of the others that we've talked about. I don't know if it would scratch the itch fully because it's pretty much just a card game. But it is definitely tech tree heavy and it's got a lot of different things going on with the cards. It doesn't quite have the same feel as a lot of the others that we've talked about, ones that we really, really love. It is also one of those ones that starts at the beginning of time, basically. And you do develop a civilization through tech and all of that. Through the Ages, a new story of civilization.
Most of the games we've talked about, there's no way that my wife would be willing to play these. However, one of the games on our list rated a 3.96 out of 5 on weight, but it's one my wife will play, and that's Terra Mystica. Everybody starts out as a different race, trying to build your civilization up. It's played on a board that has different terrain types. And in order to build your civilization, build more building. In order to build buildings, you have to build on a terrain matching your preferred terrain type for your race, which means you have to transform terrain on the board. One of the resources in the game are spades, and it costs spades or shovels. You have to spend so many, so there's a wheel. You have to follow that wheel, and it has all the different terrain types, and you have to count how many spades are in between your preferred terrain type at the top, at the 12 o'clock position, and the terrain type that you want to transform. And that's how many spades it costs to transform that. Actually, one of the mechanisms I like most about Terra Mystica, when you build buildings, it actually increases your income. If you build a settlement, you're going to get more workers during the income phase. If you build a trading house, you have to put your settlement back on your covers up that income. It's one less worker you're gaining, but you're unlocking gold or you're unlocking some other thing that's specific to your race. You can change that trading post into a temple, or you can upgrade it to your fortress. But then that trading post goes back onto your board and covers up that income, and it unlocks something else. When you have your temple, you can upgrade that as well. I love that mechanism. As you're building up your civilization, you're basically having to remove something to upgrade it, and it's going to hurt you in another way. So you have to kind of decide and balance out on what you want to do and what you want to upgrade. The other mechanism in that game I really love is the power, the way that power works. You have 3 different pots that you have power tokens in. You have pots 1, 2, and 3, and you can only spend power from the third one. And it just rotates. So if you spend your power, all those power tokens go into your pot number 1. If you ever gain power, you have to move power from the first pot to the second pot. Once pot number 1's empty and you gain power, it goes from 2 to 3. Kind of difficult to get power, but there's the actions that you can take, kind of like bonus actions that are on the actual board, once per round, and anybody can take them. If you have the power, they can be really beneficial. Great game. I love the mechanics, the uniqueness of this, and Gaia Project is very similar to Terra Mystica, basically a re-implementation of it. Both of them are awesome games. As far as scratching that civilization itch, maybe a little bit, not quite so much as maybe a History of the World or something with a tech tree like Twilight Imperium. Still, if it's one that I can get my wife to play and it's a heavier game like that, that's definitely a bonus.
Well, excellent. That concludes our episode of Civilization Games. We did not get to half of the games that were on Andy's list, probably double games that were on my list. That is a great sampling of some of these games. Some of those games are the beefier games. You guys have kind of concluded that the beefier the game, the more it represents that civilization theme. I like variety in my life, I guess. So, I don't mind playing games for 4 hours, but not necessarily the same game. But I can from time to time, for sure. Descent is proof of that.
I think if you have the expectation going in, it's a lot different than just sit down and play this.
Somewhat.
You enjoy Nemesis.
No, you're absolutely right. And I enjoy some of these other games, as discussed, as long as I don't have to leave the game for 20 minutes. Go watch something on TV and come back and take my turn. I'm more involved in that game for sure. Next week, we're going to be talking about our year-end review. It'll be the last episode of the year. We'll talk about all of our highlights from 2021. The week after that, we'll dig into what we're excited about for 2022.
Awesome. Until next time.
We'll see you advancing your civilization on the game table.
As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter @MeepleNation. We also have Instagram.
Under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product, and they have so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braden Detergent for our music.
Did we miss anything, boss man?
No, I think we got it covered.
You're gonna say goodnight again? I mean, oh,
It
okay.
was
Once is
just
enough.
the one time.
Okay, good. That was kind of creepy.
No, I know. It felt really, really awkward doing it. But
It didn't feel good while I did it.
no,